So, they say here, Dear Kirsche, we opened Bridge 25 with a call to courageous leadership in the face of erasure, fear, and politicized progress. Now more than ever, we must reject neutrality, reclaim the narrative, and protect what's true. What a really weird thing to say. Remember how they've been saying silence is compliance and also silence is violence for the past few years? We now just have them outright stating we must reject neutrality. Sorry, all of you guys who thought that you could remain as neutral as like fucking Switzerland, all right? Like you don't have that luxury anymore. You're either going to pick a side or one will be picked for you. Time to get the glow fuel. This year, we were reminded that progress requires resistance. Democracy demands participation. DEI is not a moment, it's a mandate. From critical conversations on the threats and opportunities of DEI to a new paradigm shift with inclusive marketing to vulnerable storytelling that connected us to our shared humanity, Bridge 25 was a rallying cry for what's possible when we lead with courage, conviction, and focus. Yeah, I don't like how they're calling DEI a mandate. I mean, we know from the beginning they've been calling DEI not just a moral imperative, but something that needs to be embedded in the DNA of companies. So calling it a mandate isn't really any different from what they've already been saying. It's just using more blunt language than they were before. Bridge 25 was a rallying cry, by the way. As our very own Bridge chair, Sandra Sims-Williams said, restart, reset, refresh as many times as you need, just never give up. And this is in regards to DEI and DEI policies. And I haven't been able to show any of the DEI meetings that I have been part of before. But I've read you guys some quotes from them. I have shown you like articles that repeat the talking points that they've talked about at the meetings. The entire time they have been talking about, it doesn't matter what you call your DEI. It doesn't matter what your department is called. It doesn't matter what your participation groups are called. It doesn't matter what the name for anything is. What matters is that you are committed to doing the DEI work regardless of the name. They're always going to be here, aren't they? Like the embodiment of entropy itself. This is where I like kind of had, you know, that big think like months ago where it's like, if all communists do are play word games in order to convince retards to go along with what they're doing, because they can convince those retards that what they're doing is a good thing. And if you're doing a good thing, you must be a good person. And if you're a good person, you get those nice ass pets all over social media. And a lot of people live for those ass pets. And they don't really realize that what they're doing is ushering in something that's not good until it's far too late and they start feeling the negative consequences of what's going on. So it's like, how do you fight people who do nothing but lie and subvert language? Like, even in the executive order where Trump said that he wants to get rid of DEI and DEI under any other name that may come to it, people were like, oh, that's too vague. You can't do that. Like, what are you trying to say here? And it's like, well, what else are you supposed to say if what they keep doing is changing the name? So they're like, well, that's not DEI, so you can't get rid of it underneath your own mandate, right? So it's just how do you deal with these kinds of things? You must join the cause. It sounds a lot like the 1920s and 30s authoritarian talk. Yeah. Here are a few key takeaways and themes. Day 1 was lead with courage. We opened Bridge 25 with a call to courageous leadership in the face of erasure, fear, and politicized progress. DEI is not broken, it broke power. Now more than ever, we must reject neutrality, reclaim the narrative, and protect what's true. Storytelling is resistance. Through our Bridge stories, Nats Getty, Bernice Alcala, and the Paris Free, we witnessed that when our identities, histories, and lived experiences are honored, empathy deepens and momentum builds. To watch the Paris 3 documentary, click here. I don't know what the Paris 3 documentary is. Day 2, good growth, how brands win with social impact. Dr. Omar Rodriguez Villa framed inclusion as a business growth strategy, showing how social impact markets reward brands that take real action. His new book, with the same title, offers leaders the tools and data-driven strategies that connect how social missions correlate to competitive advantage. There's a special discounted link for attendees, or use a code GOOD25 for 25% off. Imagine shilling the guy who works with you's book while also using him as a source for something. That's kind of funny. They're still trying to sell DEI as good for business. I mean, yeah, they have to. The DEI has to be good for business because they have to be able to use it in the corporate sphere in order to push it outside of that and get more people on board. If you are just like an average worker guy, if you're like in IT, or if you're like a janitor, or if you're just like, you know, a normal person in a job, right? They want everyone to be beholden to the tenets of DEI, and they want you to be bringing this work home with you, having discussions about it like with your friends and with your family, not forced discussions. They want to inundate you with this stuff so much to the point that you just talk about it like it's a normal thing to talk about with people. Even Bridge hates the fence sitters. Or you just tune it out. That's what people have been doing already, right? People have been tuning it out. Like, everyone at their job has gotten, like, the weird compliance, like, DEI briefings and whatnot, where you just have to check your boxes and continue on with your day. And they count on people who are going to do that and eventually get permeated with what they're intaking from those just checkbox forms. And eventually you won't just be checkboxing it. Eventually, the people who are just checkboxing it have helped permeate newer employees, helped permeate younger employees to the point where you, as the person who doesn't care and just do it to keep your job, are vastly outnumbered, and you're probably going to end up losing your job anyway. Your team actively mocks it, then you should figure out a way to stop having to do it. If it's still there and all of you mock it, something should be done to, like, notify your higher ups, like, hey, we shouldn't have this here. I've mentioned the EEOC stuff multiple times before. The EEOC has come out and resoundingly stated that filing discrimination complaints is not just for perceived protected classes, it's for everyone. And you can be discriminated against. You can have, you know, discrimination lobbed at you for being white or for being male. And so people who have been discriminated against under DEI policies should submit things to the EEOC. Inclusive marketing, the smartest growth strategy. Inclusive marketing isn't just about representation. It's a transformational business imperative. This session revealed how brands can create growth markets by authentically connecting with historically excluded audiences. Also announced was a paradigm shift, which officially replaces general market and multicultural market with inclusive market. New definitions are now available for public comment. Okay, hold on, that's actually interesting. If they're moving away from the two distinctly different markets of being called general market and multicultural market, I'm kind of interested in how they've combined this into a single market that they are now targeting with this stuff. Bridge inclusive marketing definitions for public review and comment. A new industry paradigm, inclusive marketing. Background: just as the early days of the internet and mobile required a shift in mindset before the dollars followed, the same is now true for inclusive marketing. Despite the proven business opportunity, widespread adoption has lagged. Inclusive media planning is often siloed under multicultural marketing, fragmented, inconsistent, and misaligned with today's consumer landscape. The industry still lacks shared definitions, cohesive frameworks, attribution models, and equitable systems, which has resulted in an inefficient ecosystem that stunts both growth and impact. To unlock the next era of brand relevance and business performance, we must redefine the playing field. That starts with a unified set of industry definitions that blend multicultural and general market strategies into one modern, inclusive approach. Problem and opportunity. According to the Selig Center, there is over $6 trillion in buying power across Black, Hispanic, Asian, and Native American communities. The LGBTQIA+ community represents a $3.7 trillion market. Research shows that the impact of inclusion is 3 times on par with pricing strategies, and companies like Procter & Gamble have publicly stated that a well-executed inclusive marketing strategy can drive $500 million in growth in year one. Yet, despite these numbers, the systems to reach these audiences remain fragmented. Inconsistencies in terminology and approach continue to stall progress. Why now? With DEI under political attack, the stakes are even higher. Companies are being forced to reassess their commitments, often without the clarity or consistency needed to move forward confidently. Without a shared set of definitions, brands risk pulling back, misstepping, or acting in ways that undermine both performance and purpose. Definitions create alignment, reduce risk and vulnerabilities, and allow us to establish consistency to drive and measure results. See, this is interesting to me because Bridge has been, as I've been saying for the past year and a half, Bridge has been positioning itself as the new iteration of DEI. A lot of people have erroneously claimed that I have said that Bridge is the redefining of DEI, and it's not. It's not like the new acronym. It's not like the new terminology. Bridge is the new initiative that will be all-encompassing the corporate sector. They want to be how other companies work together and push in lockstep DEI strategies to transform the entire landscape. Again, these people are foregoing short-term profit for a long-term cultural victory. But what's interesting is that they have been saying that the definitions don't really matter that much. And this might be because I asked a few questions at one point about how, like, there are people that are worried that the commitment to DEI is now lacking. There are people that see companies dropping equity. They see SHRM dropping equity. They see companies, obscuring what they're doing. And they're worried that without these blatant definitions and these things to look at and point to, that the commitment to DEI will start wavering. And Cheryl Dijja and other people involved at Bridge have been saying that the definitions shouldn't matter. It's the commitment that does. So as long as people are committed to doing the work, the definition therein doesn't matter as much. But now they're kind of going back on that a little bit and saying that we need some kind of shared definition across companies, across the landscape, to create alignment, reduce risk, and allow established consistency. But what's weird is that they haven't spent all that long changing the definitions. It's only been about a year since companies started pulling back definitions of equity, started using more inclusive language, with heavy quotes on that, right? They've started using more language that sounds much better than how polarizing a word like equity is, even though it's the same exact thing. So when they've spent the last year pulling back on these things, and with how many people still understand what DEI is and dislike it, I don't know if now is the time to come out with new definitions to use unilaterally across the entire corporate landscape. The Progress, Bridge convened a committee of leaders from over 50 companies across the marketing and media ecosystem. From trade groups to Fortune 500 brands, together we built this foundational framework, a set of definitions designed to unify our work and sharpen our impact. These definitions are being introduced at Bridge 25 and will be made available for industry-wide input, inviting all of us to take ownership of what comes next. I've brought up the Bridge leaders tab many times because, again, most people have just ignored that I've been railing on this for a year and a half. But the companies that are working together with Bridge, this is no small initiative. This is no oh, we can just ignore this because they will fizzle out. These are massive fucking companies working with Bridge in order to ensure that DEI and Marxist tenets transform our corporate landscape in the West. Again, so we have people here from Nielsen, MilkPep, Gap, Sonos, The Weather Company, Discover, Saucony, General Motors, Triple Lift, I don't know what Gum Gum is, iHeartMedia, Discover, the credit card fucking payment processor people, Channel Factory, Gaio, Michelin, Publicis Group, Yusta, Index Exchange, H&M, Best Buy, Amazon Web Services, the Ad Council, Extreme Reach, Sephora, and Sephora, along with Campbell's, the soup company, are two companies that spearheaded investment in creating Bridge. Group M, Ads Mobile, Nestle Health Science, PwC, Direct Digital Holdings, Indeed, I can't read this one, the little lighthouse one, JLC Ventures, BSI, which is the Brand Safety Institute, McKinsey and Company, which is where all of those fake studies come from, Superset, PIPG, I think that looks like, Media Brands, Identity and Impact, again, Sephora, and then we have the Bridge Chief of Staffs here, Strategic Advisors from the University of Georgia, SVP, Executive Director, City Year San Jose. I don't know what that means. iHeartMedia, Purpose Worldwide, Indiana University. There's the Campbell's lady, and Emory University down here. So they have, and these are just the visible investments from companies, right? We have no idea how many other companies are working with them. One that I can think of off the top of my head that isn't listed on this website but is working closely with Cheryl Dijja is McCormick, the spice company. So if you have McCormick Spices, the CEO guy is working with Cheryl Dijja. McKinsey is where all the evil people come from. Yeah, Microsoft is another one. Dim, you're correct. Microsoft had Cheryl Dijja speaking on one of their panels at the Cannes Lions Festival. Damn, can't support anything that isn't poisoned by Bridge. Yeah, Bridge is a huge fucking issue. A huge fucking issue. And it's sad that it doesn't get as much reporting as it should, because it's just not tasty to the algorithm at the moment. Unfortunately. So we have definitions down here that they came up with. This is a terrible background color. The definitions: inclusive market. Can I... Okay, so you can add feedback, but it doesn't look like I can read feedback. Inclusive market is defined as the intentional representation of consumers across social groups, populations, ethnicities, cultures, abilities, and identities to achieve a brand's full growth potential. Inclusive marketing is defined as a strategic process where all marketing activities deliberately identify, deeply understand, and authentically serve growth audience segments, existing and historically untapped, to reflect the community in which the organization operates and serves. Inclusive media is defined as the strategic development of a holistic media plan with intentional investment against inclusive market, with an express commitment to underrepresented, owned, operated, and targeted platforms in accordance with current legislation. This one strikes me as interesting, again, because one of the things that keeps getting reported on by Robbie Starbuck when he says companies have dropped DEI is that he says that companies will stop doing employee resource groups. They will stop doing their like minority-owned or underrepresented owned supplier programs. This is reinforcing that they're going to continue doing ERGs. They're going to continue doing the underrepresented like resource program kind of things to have for their suppliers. It's just going to be renamed to inclusive media. And when you don't have a name that sounds as obvious as like employee resource group, I don't think was as obvious until more and more people started realizing what they were. And then the like underrepresented supplier programs also, I think, could probably go under the radar as often as like affirmative action did. But calling it inclusive media, well, you can't argue against inclusive media, right? What are you, some kind of bigot? Are you trying to exclude people? Like, inclusive media can only be a good thing. They're targeting, you know, specific people who aren't currently being included, and you want that, right? So this is again them changing the language to try and obfuscate exactly what they're doing, to continue discriminating in the ways that they see are fruitful, and continue driving a wedge between people in general, unfortunately. Robbie Starbuck is definitely clout chasing off of the publicity campaigns and not doing anything substantial. Every time Starbuck wins, media always reports about how Robbie himself slayed the DEI dragon, 100% controlled op. On to inclusive brand safety and suitability. The deliberate development of culturally relevant, I can't English, brand-adjacent content strategies that are not offensive, harmful, or denigrating to people of different cultures, ethnicities, gender identities, and abilities, but do not intentionally or unintentionally defund, marginalize, or prejudice underserved communities and companies. The fuck kind of commie gobbledygook is this? What the fuck did I just read? Is this just like cancel culture rebranded into something that sounds corporate? Or, like, what? Yes. The deliberate development of culturally relevant brand-adjacent content strategies that are not offensive, harmful, or denigrating to people of different cultures, ethnicities, gender identities, and abilities. Is this kind of like how whenever there's a show about Mexicans made in Mexico, there's a lot of, like, stereotypes, and it's a lot of comedy and a lot of fun. But whenever there's an American studio that makes a Mexican cartoon, everyone is just, like, really ugly and obnoxious. And it's, like, the worst possible stereotype, but they try to play it off like it's a good thing. Inclusive creative. The development of creative briefs, campaigns, content, and messaging co-created by a diverse group of talent across agency, client, casting, and production partners. This process intentionally integrates inclusive data, AI, and technology, guided by cultural competency to ensure authentic representation while proactively avoiding stereotypes. I don't think any of this is necessary. I mean, once again, let's go back to my Mexico example a second ago. Inclusive media platforms. Holistic and endemic platforms that prioritize equitable access across all backgrounds and abilities. These platforms deliver inclusive and authentic content, actively dismantle biases and barriers, and maintain transparency in creator compensation, ensuring fair and equitable practices for all. Yeah, I'm just gonna no, actually. If I had to learn to fucking buckle up and advocate for myself for higher, like, payment from companies as a creator, I feel like everyone should do that, right? Like, I don't think you should just be handed something extra because you get to play, like, I'm a specific color or gender card. That's kind of weird. Why is the page vomit green? Because it reflects the ideas being printed on it. That fucking equity of access BS again? Yeah, it's kind of ridiculous. Actively dismantle biases. So what you're saying is you imagine you have mind control powers? In one of Amazon's yearly, or not yearly, quarterly, like, update things, they talked about how they were using AI to dismantle unconscious bias in their employees. So again, this, like, training that people are just, like, checkboxing through because they don't want to raise complaints to management. They're trying to change the way people think and eliminate unconscious bias through AI training. You will not commit the wrong think, chat. If you don't even commit the wrong think, you'll never have the chance to get cancelled by weird, degenerate vice journalists. We also have underrepresented owned and operated media properties. A media platform / property that is at least 51% majority owned, led, and actively operated by one or more individuals from a historically marginalized or underrepresented group, including those with a certified designation. What do they mean by certified designation? And also, if the company is majority owned by an underrepresented group, then it's not an underrepresented group anymore, is it? Because it is the majority now. So I'm a little confused at how you think this word surely even the fucking room temp normies could understand the subversion in this one, right? Fairness Doctrine 2.0. Yeah, it's a certified hood classic, man. They're basically aiming for the historically privileged system that they have in South Africa. 100%, yes. Please don't call me Shirley. This is why they have a certified designation. Yeah, it's really weird. And again, when we read through CAA, which is the Creative Artist Agency, one of the largest talent agencies in California, that represents not only, like, musicians and actors, but also content creators on, like, YouTube and Twitch and TikTok. That agency had specific designations for somewhat diverse and very diverse, and they categorize things based on diversity by how few white people and how few men they had. That was literally the criteria. The less white people and the less men, the more diverse the TV show or movie was. Inclusive data practices. Inclusive data refers to data that is intentionally collected, analyzed, and applied in ways that recognize, represent, and respect the full range of people's identities, abilities, experiences, and contexts. This includes demographic, psychographic, behavioral, and cultural information across lines of race, ethnicity, gender identity, sexual orientation, ability, age, geography, socioeconomic status, and more, while adhering to strong consumer privacy principles and practices. Back to the email. We're on day 2, inclusive leadership. Internal and industry-wide inclusive leadership isn't a title, it's a daily practice. The panelists explored what it means to lead with both your head and heart, and how when storytelling is paired with data, we not only drive measurable impact, we deepen our collective value. Can't you just lead normally? Why do you need to add this weird gobbledygook into it? The risks and rewards of generative AI. While AI has the potential to democratize creativity and accelerate progress, it also risks replicating the very biases we've long fought to dismantle. The path to inclusion in AI begins with education, so we can curb misinformation, close knowledge gaps, and train smarter, more equitable systems. Please do not use the AI to reprogram your strange chess pieces. Oh, fuck these people. Yeah, right? In other words, sharing anecdotal data to reinforce a narrative. Anecdotal data is not factual evidence of a trend. I remember trying to talk to somebody who thought that, like, oh god, what year was this? This was probably like 2020 or 2021. And they said that, like, Republicans and conservatives were actually the ones who had institutional power in, like, government and education. And I was just like, what would make you think that when it's the overarching, like, progressive agenda that's been being pushed, not only in, like, you know, young educational institutions, but also in colleges, and when a lot of progressive policy is what has been being pushed through in government? Like, I don't understand how you can think that it's been, like, an institutionally powered conservative overarching power. And they were like, well, all of the people who work at the schools around me or who, like, have jobs in my area, they're all conservative. And it's like, just because everyone in your area, in your town, are conservative doesn't mean that on a large scale, conservatives control the power infrastructure. That doesn't make any sense. Like, that can be true on a small scale for where you live. Whether it is true or not, I don't know, because I don't live there. But just because it's true for your personal experience and where you might live does not make it true on the national scale. That retard doesn't get it. They can't perceive breakfast. Their progressive politics isn't politics. It's just basic human rights, you bigot. Oh my god. From compliance to commitment, DEI as a growth imperative. This powerhouse CDO panel emphasized that inclusion isn't just the right thing, it's the smart thing. DEI is no longer a moment, but a practice rooted in values and economic impact. Learn how IMAX is building toward marketplace impact with inclusion at the core. And I'm going to open this just to check, but I feel like this is probably going to link to their IMAX graph thingamajiggy. Day 3 was representing the brand without misrepresenting culture. Joy Allen Altemeyer, global CMO of Saucony, reminded us, culture is not a shortcut to relevance. It is a responsibility. Brands must build with, not for it. This means auditing narratives and grounding strategy in insights, not assumptions. I don't even know what that means. What do they mean by this? Silence, brand! You have no culture. You will never be a real human. You have no culture. You have no personality. You have no country of origin. You are a soulless corporation. Project Forward, Navigating Risk and Opportunity, legal experts Stacey Hawkins and Jessica Golden Cortez made a few things clear. And these are the two ladies that keep adding their opinions into the Project Forward weekly briefs. I think we're up to like issue 11 or some shit. And the last one I read on stream was like 6, because it's been a while since I've been able to read them. Executive orders are not law. Title VII remains the legal foundation. Disparate impact is still enforceable. DEI programs are still legal. Overcorrection is the bigger risk. Words matter, strategy matters more, and this moment requires leadership, not hesitation. Stay informed and learn how you can take action with our Project Forward weekly guidelines. We have been having to archive these ourselves, but now on Bridge's website, it looks like they have all of the archives themselves of each and every one of the weekly updates for Project Forward. And it looks like there's a lot more here than even the ones that I've been reading, because holy fuck, why are there so many? That is so many. Update on executive order regarding disparate impact liability. That was in April. Summary judgment for Perkins Coie in a lawsuit. Supreme Court allowed the Trump ban on transgender service members in the military to go into effect. A Berkshire Hathaway, Bristol Myers Squibb shareholders vote unanimously against anti-DEI proposals, and Kroger ousts proposal prior to vote. Oh. At Berkshire Hathaway's 2025 annual meeting on May 3rd, shareholders decisively rejected all 7 shareholder proposals related to diversity, equity, and inclusion, artificial intelligence, and environmental reporting. These proposals included calls for reports on risks from race-based initiatives, the impact of business practices on employees across various demographics, and the creation of oversight committees for diversity and AI. The board, led by Warren Buffett, opposed these measures, emphasizing the company's decentralized management style. Buffett, who controls about 30% of Berkshire's voting power, and the board stated that such proposals were unnecessary and conflicted with Berkshire's approach of allowing subsidiaries to manage their own employment policies, adhering to a straightforward philosophy of follow the law and do the right thing. At Bristol Myers Squibb, at its annual meeting of shareholders on May 6, 2025, Bristol Myers Squibb, or BMS, faced 2 anti-DEI proposals by the NCPPR. In its proxy statement, BMS urged shareholders to reject both proposals, asserting its position on DEI. We value inclusion and prioritize building an inclusive workforce in compliance with applicable non-discrimination laws, as do our shareholders. We believe our inclusion philosophy leads to greater financial and patient outcomes and generates shareholder value, because it helps drive our strategic goal to reach more patients with our transformative medicines. Shareholders overwhelmingly voted to reject both proposals. 98 to 1% and 1% abstained, and 97 to 2% with 1% abstaining. That's kind of crazy. We are taking bold, intentional action to do our part to ensure that healthcare works for everyone. I am proud of our progress in building a truly inclusive culture. Our diverse workforce reflects our communities and our global patient population, and is enabling our company to deliver innovation and more equitable care. At Kroger, in early 2025, the Kroger company sought to exclude a shareholder proposal from its proxy materials that requested the company to issue a public report detailing the potential risks associated with omitting viewpoint and ideology from its written equal employment opportunity policy. Kroger argued that the proposal pertained to the company's ordinary business operations and thus qualified for exclusion under SEC Rule 14A-8, I think that says I-7. On May 7th, 2025, the SEC concurred with Kroger's assessment, allowing the company to omit the proposal from its 2025 proxy materials. Kroger has consistently emphasized its commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Kroger's internal Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Advisory Council includes cross-functional leaders who are committed to advancing progress. The council works closely with senior officers and business leaders to identify opportunities and specific actions for improvement. The Bridge point of view on this shit is, the message from shareholders is clear. Inclusion is not a political liability. It is a business priority. When DEI is integrated into long-term strategy, performance metrics, and board-level governance, it earns the confidence of stakeholders, even in turbulent time. This isn't just a defense of DEI, it's a confirmation that companies can lead with clarity, withstand ideological pressure, and win the support of the market. I just don't believe you, actually, based on what we've seen and what happens when this stuff is embedded in companies. Tie DEI to long-term value creation. Position DEI as core to sustainable growth, driving innovation, talent retention, consumer relevance, and risk mitigation. Use investor communications to show how inclusion fuels resilience and performance. Once again, this is what they've been saying they're going to do since 2023, and what I've been talking about since I found out about this initiative in January of 2024. They are trying to tie DEI intricately into all of the processes at each company, so that you will not be able to escape their tenets, you will be inundated with it, and it won't matter if you disagree, you will be forced to comply. Equip the board with a confident narrative. Boards must speak to DEI as a matter of business oversight, not as a social stance. Arm directors with clear data, scenarios, and language to frame DEI as a part of fiduciary duty, not ideological debate. I like how they worded it as frame DEI as a part of fiduciary duty, because it's not a part of fiduciary duty. It is an ideological debate, and it is something that they believe is morally imperative, and it has only negative impact on fiduciary duty. So the fact that they actually worded it like that is funny. Integrate DEI into risk governance. Attacks on DEI aren't just PR issues, they're enterprise risks. Build DEI into your ERM framework to make clear dismantling inclusion exposes the company to reputational, legal, and operational harm. This is essentially a repackaged in corpo speak threat. If you don't do what we want in regards to DEI, your company will face reputational, legal, and operational harm. You loathe these people? I don't see how anyone can't not loathe these people. As detailed in earlier issues of Project Forward 6 and 8, the administration issued an executive order targeting law firms seeking to settle scores with those representing political opponents, most notably Perkins Coie. The order revoked the firm's federal security clearances and framed the action as part of an effort to end discrimination under diversity, equity, and inclusion policies and ensure that federal benefits support the laws and policies of the United States, including those laws and policies promoting our national security and respecting the democratic process. In response, Perkins Coie filed suit in the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia, challenging the executive order as an abuse of executive power. The legal community responded in force, and by April, hundreds of law firms, legal scholars, former judges, and advocacy organizations filed amicus briefs in support of the firm. On May 2nd, the court issued a final ruling, permanently blocking the executive order and delivering a decisive rebuke to the administration's attempt to use government authority to intimidate and punish its perceived opponents. Now, I don't remember everything about this lawsuit because it's been a while since I've talked about this stuff, but it seems as if this executive order targeting law firms in order to make sure that they are actually working in equality and fairness, trying to get rid of DEI, it seems very strange to me that not only would law firms, legal scholars, former judges, and advocacy organizations would all walk in lockstep against actual, equal employment opportunity and non-discrimination, but the fact that it is being celebrated that it was permanently blocked, that the government couldn't enforce actual equality, that seems a little strange. That seems a little odd. It legitimately sounds like mafia and how they would strong-arm businesses into doing what they want. Yeah. You work for Kroger and have so for nearly 10 years, part-time. Don't need to worry since Kroger cannot keep anyone under 25 for more than 1 year without mass firings or quitting. The only people there long-term are your age or ancient. So frankly, Kroger can and will only fail because they cannot keep anyone skilled and everyone else is jaded and doesn't give a good damn, so it's funny to you. I mean, I would rather see people give enough of a damn to try and convince leadership to ditch these kinds of policies. No such thing as permanent blocking unless it was with prejudice. The legal interpretation of this case is, in its May 2nd ruling, the District Court for the District of Columbia found that the Trump administration's revocation of Perkins Coie's security clearances based solely on the firm's public support for diversity, equity, and inclusion constituted a clear violation of the First Amendment. And see, again, this is where I think things get very difficult, right? If you have communist subversives trying to deal damage to your country, the logical thing that makes sense is to revoke their security clearances. That is the only thing that makes sense. However, unfortunately, I have to also agree that, yeah, it would constitute a clear violation of the First Amendment. So, like, how do you fight back against this kind of ideology that is insidious and wants to transform your country if all of the tools with which you can use to fight back are hamstrung because of the laws of your country? What do you do? What do you do in these cases? First Amendment equals security clearances? No. The First Amendment means, like, you have the right to, like, free speech, right? So free speech would cover them supporting diversity, equity, and inclusion. And since that's their right to free speech to say that they support that, they can't have their security clearances revoked based on that. We need a definitive list of corpos and brands that engage with these practices so we can vote with our wallet. I don't think that would be something you can do with a company that has, like, governmental security clearance stuff. And no one has a right to all the secrets. On the other hand, security clearance is entirely at the pressure of the executive branch. I mean, I would hope so, right? What do you do? Glow! The government can remove clearance for any reason. Maybe the fact that they said that they were removing it due to DEI instead of just like, we don't want to work with you anymore was the problem. I'm not sure. Security clearance comes with a lot of restrictions in behavior. This is not an argument. I mean, that's true. There are restrictions. First Amendment protections versus employment codes of conduct. And I think when we first read about this in another one of the briefs, it was weird to me that, like, it's a directive coming from the company that they support DEI and not coming from an individual. And somehow there's, like, a weird loophole that, like, companies are also entitled to, like, First Amendment protections despite not being people because of the people who are behind the company. The court wrote that public statements supporting diversity standing alone provided not even a scintilla of evidence of impropriety, let alone illegality. It further affirmed that Perkins Coie's stated intent to consider attorneys from diverse backgrounds did not amount to illegal quotas or discriminatory practices. And, like, legally, they're correct, but we all know that in practice, what they stated here is actually what's happening. So once again, I have to come back to the, how do you fight this thing? If, because of the levels of freedom that we value in our country, that we do not want disturbed and we do not want trampled on, allow these kinds of ideological subversions to permeate without being able to push back on them. Notably, the court cited the administration's own concession during the injunction hearing. Diversity in and of itself isn't the problem. The problem is stereotyping based on race or gender, with no evidence of such conduct by the firm. The court concluded that the executive order was not grounded in law, but rather in viewpoint discrimination, an attempt to punish the firm for its values. And it's also, I don't think the problem is even stereotype based on race or gender, because they're not stereotyping. They're discriminating in a positive way. They're giving positive discrimination to people that they claim are underrepresented groups, and that positive discrimination is the correct angle to go in. It's like how they teach hiring managers to avoid hordes of Americans clawing at their doors like zombies looking for work, so they can claim, well, can't find Americans, time to get some H-1Bs. Yeah, I tried having to, like, explain this the other day, and I'm not like the most eloquent when I put some of my ideas from, like, brain to words. But it's like, it's kind of tiring to watch companies be like, we don't have to pay Americans correct wages. We don't have to spend the money hiring Americans when we can just import people from other countries who will work for pennies on the dollar. If we can import all this cheap labor, we can make more profit. But then if you continuously do that, not only are you going to eventually be replacing the native demographics, right? Like in the UK, the native British people are being replaced. Over in America, regardless of like your actual racial structure, Americans are being taken over by immigration. And you just have all these conglomerates being like, oh yeah, let's hire all of these cheap laborers. How are Americans going to be able to afford to live in their own country if everyone else gets the preferential treatment, especially if they're here illegally? Which is why they want Haiti and not Cuba. Yeah, I brought up Cuba when I was trying to explain this, and it's like, They want specific demographics that will vote for them. They want lifetime voters to change the voting demographics in a country so that they can remain perpetually in power. And this is why under Obama, wet foot, dry foot was a policy that was dropped. Cubans are not the kind of immigrants that they want here because Cubans do not vote in the quote-unquote correct way. The bridge point of view on this fucking court case. This is not just a legal ruling, it's a line in the sand. The court's decision in Perkins Coie versus Trump makes one thing unequivocally clear. Supporting diversity, equity, and inclusion is not illegal, and it is not up for political reinterpretation. It is protected speech under the First Amendment. When a sitting administration uses the weight of federal power to punish a private employer for expressing inclusive values, it crosses a line, not just legally, but morally. And again, I think this is a really insidious way to phrase things. Because the tenets of DEI are exclusion, right? Last year, when Sherm gave their speech, they did say that they needed to start attempting to include white males in their spaces because in order to completely transform culture, they need the help of white males pushing this narrative with them. If they don't have the white males on board, they're not going to be able to transform the culture the way that they want to. So even though DEI is inherently exclusive and is trying to use discrimination in what they perceive as a positive way, right? This is what they think is positive discrimination, so it's okay to do. It's a little bit of a scary concept that they're saying that this kind of discrimination is protected under free speech. When a sitting administration uses the weight of federal power to punish a private employer for expressing inclusive values, it crosses a line, not just legally, but morally. CEOs must understand the stakes. The ruling reinforces that companies have the constitutional right to express support for diversity, equity, and inclusion without fear of government retaliation. It affirms that setting aspirational goals, acknowledging systemic barriers, or investing in inclusive practices are not only lawful, they are expressions of a company's value and business strategy. These actions do not constitute illegal discrimination. The courts are rejecting attempts to frame them as such. And I mean, again, on the basis of free speech, I can't even disagree that they should be able to express support for DEI without fear of government retaliation. But again, when we know what this expression of support leads to as far as practice goes in their actions, how do you combat this? Is it just going to be endless lawsuits pointing out how all of this is just discrimination? How they tried reframing reverse discrimination as it is instead of it just being normal discrimination, like the EEOC points out, that there should not be any sort of protected classes, but everyone should be entitled to the same protections under discriminatory practices. Sunlight from civil lawsuits. I mean, I guess that's the only way, right? I have no idea how you would go about fixing this kind of stuff. What the Trump administration attempted through executive action was not grounded in law. It was an effort to chill free expression and weaponize government authority to intimidate. The court rejected that abuse of power, and in doing so, it set a precedent that protects companies from being coerced into silence. And it's how do you even respond to this kind of thing, right? Because they're going to keep using this escalating language to make people fear the Trump administration taking away their rights to speech and their rights to protect themselves. But that's not what's happening here. This is, in totality, a battlefield against Marxism and Marxist ideals. But how do you end up waging that kind of battle when they have the ability to subvert language and you have to play by the law? You fight by pointing it out like you're doing? I think it's going to take a lot more than just pointing it out, because I feel like that's what we've been doing for ages. And I can't remember his name, but that guy, the conservative activist guy who has been bringing these lawsuits, who has been getting financial arms of this stuff shut down, who have been getting some of these policies thrown out of institutions, maybe that is the only way to do this, where it's look, we can't discriminate on the basis of free speech, so they're free to express their support for it all they want, but this is inherently discriminatory in practice. Their words are not what they're doing, and so even though they can win against us based on their terminology and based on warfare in the legal grounds for wording, When we start looking at their actions instead of what they say, the legal cases are much more in favor of us. Got to do something, some kind of action. Tons of lawsuits and reporting it to the EEOC because it's patently illegal under the Civil Rights Act. And step B is, if that doesn't work, glow. Hopefully step B is not necessary. Smacks of actually corporations censoring people on behalf of the feds is free speech. Yeah, I keep mentioning the EEOC because they keep bringing up like you can bring discriminatory cases to them if your work has DEI tenets that have overtly discriminated against you. And I know most people have like never even thought that that was an option for them because it's just like, oh, I'm white and I'm male, therefore I have no recourse and I just kind of got to sit here and take it. But the EEOC has come out and been like, no, that's not the case. Please, if you have experienced something, report it. We cannot normalize political coercion, we cannot mistake government overreach for legal risk, and we cannot lead as though the First Amendment doesn't apply inside the boardroom. What happened to Perkins Coie was not an anomaly, it was a test, and the court's ruling is a call to every leader. You do not have to shrink your values to protect your business, you can stand your ground, and you have the Constitution on your side. 1. Assert your First Amendment protections. Ensure your DEI commitments are framed as value-based expressions of corporate purpose and business strategy, not as hiring mandates. Make clear that the public support for inclusion is constitutionally protected and cannot be coerced or chilled by government action. And again, a lot of companies have been dropping equity in favor of inclusion because inclusion is a much better word to subvert, and it's much less polarizing than what equity is, but inclusion is still the action of equity in the way that they're using it. And when they say, ensure your DEI commitments are framed as value-based expressions of corporate purpose and business strategy, not as hiring mandates, they're saying, don't overtly talk about hiring metrics and having a specific amount of specific people. Like, the S&P 500 had some sort of mandate previously where like each company was supposed to have a certain amount of women and a certain amount of minorities on the board. And that got taken down a few months ago. I know we read about it on stream, but I don't remember exactly when that happened. So we read over that. And so they're saying stop having these like overt public pointable at goals. You need to just embed these tenets in your business strategy so that it's not something people can say is illegal, right? This is just how your company operates. You just happen to have these percentages and these numbers. It wasn't something you specifically targeted. Remember me mentioning that board diversity requirement being a thing, but you didn't hear that it was struck down in court? I know we went over it on stream, but I don't remember when it was. I know it was months ago though. And it was a specific quota. I don't know if it was like a legal mandate thing, but it was a specific quota on the S&P 500 that just like, they decided to scrap it. They decided to get rid of it. Build a coalition response strategy. In the face of targeted political action, don't stand alone. Join or build legal and business coalitions, much like the amicus support seen in this case, to demonstrate that inclusive values are not fringe positions, but shared commitments across industries. And once again, you can see the subversion of the use of inclusive here. Like, yes, normal people are not going to be like inclusivity bad, because obviously inclusivity based on its actual definition is good, but the way that they are using it, they're saying it's not a fringe position, when that is absolutely what they are doing with subversion of language. It is a fringe position. It is inherently discriminatory, and they know that, and so they have to lie about it. Go on the offensive, reaffirm inclusion in corporate policy. Don't just defend your DEI strategy, reaffirm it. Update your public policy statements, ESG reports, and investor communications to explicitly state that inclusion is a core business principle. The fight for democracy and human rights. Leaders from the NAACP, GLAAD, and Planned Parenthood reminded us, when rights are restricted for one, they're threatened for all. We must name injustice boldly and support each other across lines of difference with intentionality. Co-creation over campaigns, Gen Z's blueprint for brand inclusion. This energizing conversation spotlighted how e.l.f. Beauty and H&M are embedding Gen Z's values, not just their voices, into the DNA of their hands, from in-person activations to purpose-driven storytelling. And I haven't put out anything on H&M to my knowledge. I don't think I've talked about them, but I have posted quite a bit on e.l.f. Beauty and their different initiatives, including Too Many Dicks, which is that there are too many men on C-suites and in boardrooms, and they need to be equalized with women. Keep the conversation going. Join our Bridge community calls to connect with values-aligned peers and rising change makers. Rising stars and real leaders, our Bridge 25 rising stars spoke truth to we are over-mentored and under-sponsored. What they asked for is community, transparency, and access. It's never too early to nominate a game changer for the next Rising Stars cohort and help us expand the spotlight. And then there's more learning about the process of becoming a Rising Star. Bridge was built not just to weather the storm, but to lead through it. Thank you for being part of the Bridge community. Your voice, your leadership, and your courage are shaping the future. Forward together, with courage, Cheryl. P.S. Here's how to stay connected and take action. And they have the Bridge call, follow Project Forward, and then they have their partners here at the bottom. Ads Mobile, Indeed, Gaio, Gap, Saucony, Extreme Reach, Gale, Sephora, Digital Direct Holdings, and the Transformation Guild. So this was an interesting thing for like a recap of their Bridge Forward. I would very much like to see videos from the Bridge retreat if possible. And the only video I could find by searching for Bridge 25 Forward was this video on Instagram. And this is by a lady called La Muerte Maria. I've never heard of her, don't know who she is. Bridge 25, where art meets purpose. This year, I had the honor of creating a full custom look for Bridge 25, a gathering of visionary leaders committed to transforming diversity, equity, and inclusion into actionable business practices. Inspired by Bridge's mission to operationalize inclusion across all facets of business, I designed this piece to reflect their core values: belonging, representation, inclusion, diversity, growth, and equity. And again, that is the acronym for Bridge. I created and airbrushed the entire look by hand, including a custom skirt featuring the Bridge 25 logo, raised fists, and the phrase, "Go forward in courage," which is what Cheryl signs off the Bridge Smart Brief stuff with. Along with the hem, the bold themes of forward and DEI is resistance. A fully airbrushed blouse designed to complement the palette and movement. A handmade headpiece with color-corrected flowers that I re-airbrushed to match the event theme. A unified design using a vibrant palette of royal purple, magenta, sunflower, teal, and chartreuse. This creation represents the bridge between art and advocacy, showing how custom wearable design can amplify an organization's mission with beauty and power. If your company or organization is ready to elevate your next event through bespoke art that speaks your values, let's connect. And there's a lot of people commenting on how beautiful it is. Let's play the video. It's like a horror movie. I hate hallways. Is this DMCA? Is it I've never heard the song. Let's put my BGM back on then. I've never heard that song before, so I don't know if it was DMCA. What the fuck is that? I don't know. I've never heard of it. I muted it. Yes, they got the Bridge Project Forward on the hem of the dress. They got all the like little Globo Homo art symbols all over the dress. They got the Project Forward logo here with a bunch of raised fists. And it says Bridge 25 Forward on her dress. I never thought I would see Bridge being promoted in this way, especially considering I am pretty much the only person speaking against it. Why must they co-opt cultures for this? Well, I mean, I'm assuming she's actually Mexican. I don't think she's co-opting culture. I mean, like, the headpiece is beautiful, and her makeup work is impeccable. The dress is hideous. Well, like, the headpiece and the makeup looks pretty good. Smash Dia de Muertos DEI, a fucking disgrace. The face makeup is nice, but the rest, man, this is not it. I'd wear the headdress. The headdress is cute. The color tries to make it less terrifying, but it's so disconcerting. It really is. Considering how racist the progressives are, you wouldn't be surprised. DEI de Muertos, true. Are they doing Bridge in the correct, decent way? What the fuck are you talking about? She is a Katrina, the representation of death as a high-class Mexican lady. Yeah, I've seen the Dia de los Muertos fucking celebrations. A DEI de los Muertos, symbolic, true.